Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is December the 12th at 3 o'clock, and this is the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership meeting. We do have quite a few people still connecting. We had a little hiccup with some of our links, so I will do a long announcement and give them a chance to get involved. Before we start, we've got a full agenda today with some decisions that have to be made and some next steps that are going to happen about what happens with the work this group does in the future. So I appreciate all of you being here. And we will start out with, I know I have some subcommittee updates that were going to be very brief. I'm going to jump around to who's here so I can wait for the others to jump in. But Victoria, if you're ready and you can give us 3 minutes or so on what has happening with that subcommittee that you've been working on, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely. So as Kiki mentioned, I'm Victoria O'Banion. For anybody who doesn't know, I work for the ROC Northwest program that serves residents of manufactured housing communities. We have incorporated one manufactured housing community, Oakcrest, and we are getting ready to send a certified letter to that owner to notify them of their intent to purchase. And I am working with six other communities across Kootenai County that are in the initial stages of organizing as well. The residents are eager and excited to be part of this process and be part of this opportunity. They are thankful for the opportunity to be able to have their communities protected. I think one thing that is really critical from what I've seen in my conversations is that this is an asset class of residents that are not always seen, and sometimes that's intentional, and they know that. And they want to ensure that they're able to stay in the homes that they own. There is a lot of things that happen behind that brick wall, and they want to make sure that their voice is heard, and they are very thankful for this opportunity to be elevated and be part of that conversation for affordable housing. That's my update.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I will also, Hillary, if you can look to see if you can find Carrie Ward as a participant. She is doing a report for Home Share. If you could make her a panelist. Yep. And just so you know, Victoria, to just dovetail a little bit on that, what it means is that our mobile home park folks have an opportunity to have Victoria's assistance, and she's gotten some local support from a lot of folks who are helping her put together programs to incorporate those parks so that if the owner decides to sell, those folks are ready to go. So thank you for that work.
Yeah, and Keith, if I can jump in, I'm sorry, you reminded me that we do have a volunteer that is doing some research for us on all of the park owners. That information is not readily available. And so we do have a volunteer that is doing that research. So if you as the city employee or a personal note, you know somebody who owns a park, can you please share that information? Because that is very helpful for us as we go to notify the owners of the formed resident organization.
Great. And again, yes, that was one of the things that was born out of the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership. So we're really happy to see that subcommittee launched and doing good work and getting good community support and information. So I appreciate all of that work. So we have a few more people in. I will jump to whoever, let's see, who do we have next? David Callahan, I scooped right over you on the agenda. Do you have anything to report on open space? I'm guessing you don't because you're muted. And I heard you say, I don't think we have anything new.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, David. Appreciate you being here and all that you have done on this work too. And Jeff Bowler just popped in, but I'm going to skip right to Lindsay Allen. If you are ready and have anything that we have talked about on the Housing Task Force.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kiki. Lindsay Allen, Coeur d'Alene Regional Realtors here. Our update is kind of short and sweet, but we're looking to re-engage our Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership Task Force in January. We've had a couple of administrative distractions in the last 40-ish, 50 days that have unfortunately been very time consuming from a like administrative and personnel standpoint. So I apologize, we're not further along, but it definitely is our intention to reconvene in January with our task force. What we want to do, because we've been kind of limited in the activities that we can engage in from a realtor standpoint through our legal counsel for, use of or private property rights and, advocating for one property owner versus another. One of the things that we kind of determined was starting a giving campaign, a year-long giving campaign, where we can donate financially to entities like PAHA or Kiki. What was the other one outside of PAHA that was able to?
Yeah, it's the Idaho Housing Partnership Foundation that's run under IH.
Yes,
and
yes.
That's who we've had some presentations from, and I think Corey and Jack have answered some questions, but Deanna Ward is the one who runs that operation, and the basis of that is that your group could do a giving campaign into that foundation that could then by line item restrict funds back to individual projects in Kootenai County. So we'll be connecting you again. I guess what I'm hearing is in January,
Yes.
we're going to revisit that.
Yep, absolutely. And we know that in terms of our membership, realtor members and affiliates, in addition to kind of educating our clients and prospects, that we can direct as much attention and giving to a campaign that will fund down payment assistance or, a second mortgage to help with closing costs. And that doesn't necessarily pit any property owner against another, but it does help enable, an aspect of the affordable housing crisis, which is lack of funds and the tough time that people have saving up for those things. So it gives them a little bit more breathing room. And we feel like this is going to be a really positive impact for our local workforce and helping to get them into stable housing.
Lindsay, I think it's a super effort. I appreciate all your task force is doing, and I'll be available to help connect, get those meetings going in January. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then up next, Carrie Ward, who Carrie is the Executive Director of HomeShare Kootenai County, and she's going to give a brief report on their progress for their president, Pam Hauser.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie Ward. I'm the part-time Executive Director of HomeShare Kootenai County. The board of directors hired me in October. Kiki was able to start this organization by going out and getting two $10,000 donations as seed money. So that's how this thing got started. So thank you, Kiki. With that, they got organized, and the board of directors were organized enough to put together a website and bylaws and a brochure with that, and hire me. With that, we've established a 501c3, and we are looking at doing launches. I mean, we're going to put an online platform together in the next couple of weeks. So at the beginning of January 2023, we're going to be doing launches. So that's pretty exciting. We're getting a lot of great feedback from, the community. We are going to be looking for home providers for sure. So we're going to be starting out a marketing plan to look for home providers. Plus we're fundraising too, to get on, to raise money to operating funds. So that's my update. We're going to be, again, launching in 2023, and I'm excited to give you an update next month on where we are.
Well, great. I'm excited to hear you got your 501c3 approved so quickly. and you've got a pretty active board, and it looks, I reviewed the website. That looks great. The brochure is being circulated, so I wish you good luck. And I would ask anyone who's involved in this meeting that has the ability to share information about Home Share Kootenai County, that put it on your website or reach out to Carrie for more information. We certainly have sources for a lot of folks seeking houses. And so what we need to do is be able to explain to those home providers what the benefits are, and the steps that they can take to make this a win-win for everyone. So thanks, Carrie. Appreciate that. And then Jeff Voller is here. Do you have an update or anything you want to share with us about schools real quickly?
Sure, I can share an update. Good afternoon, everyone. You know, a lot of our work has revolved around the impacts of growth and development. You know, the work with the housing that everybody's doing is really great. And I think that will impact our workforce in the long run. And so we appreciate the work that everybody is doing here. But in terms of the impact of the growth and development that we're having on this community, the school subcommittee, one of the things that we started working on was the idea of taking the school plant facility levy. That's one of the options that we have to put before voters. And what if we change the term from a 10-year to a 20-year term? In order to do that, we wrote a resolution that all three school districts in this area, Lakeland, Post Falls, and the Coeur d'Alene School District, their boards approved that resolution. And the idea behind that is, if we're going to build schools, if we run a bond, we have to have a 66 2/3 supermajority, and that's really difficult for us. We could also use the idea of the school plant facility levy, where the voter threshold is based off of the bond indebtedness that a district has. So for example, in the Coeur d'Alene School District, we could probably run one at a 55% majority, and I think all the other school districts could as well. So it would lower that voter threshold. And then expanding that term to 20 years, you could take a bigger ask and ask for a lower amount over those years to lower the burden on the taxpayers. So that's the idea behind it. We wrote the resolution. Like I said, all three school boards passed it. The steps for that is that it goes to the Idaho School Board Association at their conference, which they just held in November, and somebody carries that, and it received overwhelming support at the ISDA conference. And so then the next steps from that is we need to find a legislator to carry that into this next legislative session and see if they'd be willing to write law around that and see if we can't actually change the term for that. I've currently been talking with Senator David Lenz from down south. He's a big proponent of the idea of this, and I think he's going to be willing to carry some legislation moving forward in this next legislative session. So small wins moving forward of this. It's not to say that the legislature will react, take action on it, but that would be a huge win. And I think we saw from school districts across the state, actually, that they would support that as well because they see benefit as well. So that's probably the biggest thing I can update this group with right now.
Well, that's big. So thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Our schools are important, and appreciating all the work that you're doing out there and staying involved. So thank you.
Thank you.
I had Maggie Lyons. I don't know, Hillary, if you saw Maggie pop in, and she may or may not be.
I don't see her on, she's not on the attendees either.
Okay. Well, something may have come up there. I know Maggie and I have spoken. I'll just tell you that PAHA, as she's described it, is in kind of a restructuring and evolutionary period in the last few years. In this last year, PAHA has taken on a lot of new things that they haven't done in the past. And during the presentation, I'll talk about a few of those things. And if Maggie does happen to chime in, Hillary, I'd appreciate if you let me know that if she shows up so that she'd be able to present a couple of questions or answer more specifically to that. I will tell you that on the Public Safety Healthcare Worker Housing Subcommittee, there is still a project that is moving forward. I don't have all the good information I wanted to be able to share until January, as there's still some survey information and some details to the financial pro forma to a project being put together. And hopefully that will come out and we will be able to share more news, but it looks like it is moving forward. So that's going to be an interesting one for the community, and a great thing for us to be able to use out of the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership as a template that hopefully we can share throughout the rest of the county when it comes together. So the next thing I wanted to do is I'm going to share screen here, and I'm going to walk through a progress report that I've been giving to a number of different organizations in the last few months, but it's also been shared by other folks at, including Maggie, a couple of other organizations, to give people an idea of what we've done and where we're going. So I will try to keep it as brief as I can. Some of you have seen this before, but at the end of this progress report, there will be some information about what the future of this organization of Housing and Growth Issues Partnership is going to look like. You all did receive in an email 2 options that we were going to have you review in advance in case you had any questions. And as I'm sitting here, Jack and Corey, was there anything from Idaho Housing that I skipped right over you guys and didn't even ask about an update for that you wanted to share?
No, not really, Kiki, appreciate that. As far as the workforce housing, we hope to have a list within the next week or so of those projects from the first round. That's probably really the only update.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then, yep, that's it.
Okay, great. And then I still understand you're on track to, depending on the funds, maybe there's going to be a second round, and you can let us know about that at a later date.
Yeah, we're tentatively sometime first quarter of 23.
Okay, great. I apologize for skipping over you on that. I didn't mean to do that. I knew there wasn't information and I dropped it off the agenda. So I won't do that one again. Anyway, back to this presentation. I'm going to share screen now and jump in on that right away. And hopefully you can see that. Hillary, is that looking accurate for everyone?
Yes, it's if you could do full screen mode, that would help, but it's showing up. And then Maggie let me know she is joining, so hopefully she'll be on in a few minutes, if not already. Okay, Maggie just joined, Kiki. I just promoted her to panelist, so she should.
Okay, Maggie,
wanna
if
talk in
you're
a moment?
here and you want to do a minute to share what some of the updates with PAHA might be that the group will want to see, and I will try to get to full screen. Or Maggie, were you ready to do any kind of a report real quick?
Yeah, you bet I am. I'm sorry I'm late to the party.
No
So forgive
worries.
me. I lost track of time. I'm glad that I looked at my computer clock. So Kiki, I was joining as a panelist when you were talking to me. I didn't hear what you asked me to do.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We were just finishing our subcommittee reports, and as I'd shared with the group that if you didn't show up, there were some things during this progress report that did touch on the work that PAHA has done and its evolutionary process of restructuring this last year, and that I may, if you were a panelist, be able to call on you to expand on anything on the slide so that it's more accurate and current from what I might have.
Okay, great. So did you want me to do a quick overview or wait until you get to the slides? I'm not clear.
If you have something new from since we've talked, otherwise the slides will probably be fine.
Okay, I'll just wait for the slides then.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'm going to walk through this. As I said, this is a progress report that we have been using to share with the community what's happening. And this is just to refresh everyone's memory as to where we're at and what we've done so that we can take a good look together today at what the future looks like. This was the partnership's goals in the beginning, and this is how we started about 2 years ago to educate on what is possible and what is not for folks, to provide resources and information that affect all of us in the housing and growth issues area. These were the entities that started this, and I will have to say that the county has been instrumental in helping us get this information out. I appreciate that. We've had great participation from all of these groups on our work group for almost 18 months now, and it isn't possible without everybody being involved. The current mission is this. That's how it was formed. The regular information of who is who is involved is on the website and updated regularly. It's been started out with volunteer subcommittees, and you've heard from a lot of those subcommittee reports today. Those will evolve. This is a screenshot from what's currently on the website. The subcommittees have turned into reporting partners as they've moved on to other organizations, or we've added groups like the regional realtors, who are obviously not a subcommittee of our group, but they're a reporting partner because we partner with them on other projects. We have had education on what is possible throughout the county in housing and growth arena. And we did over, actually it's now about 45 presentations to different organizations, including our goal of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners Workshop, which I'll talk about a little bit later here in the slideshow, because that just occurred here about a month ago. So accomplishments to date are what we're going to touch on. We originally surveyed the citizens, determined the community priorities on housing and growth. Those results are online. And we established initially the ongoing FOQs for factual responses. I want to remind everyone that in social media and all of this a few years ago, there was a whole lot of information being spread out there that wasn't accurate, and it was causing a lot more angst than necessary. That was one of the impetuses to get this FAQ out there, and it's continually updated, and it's been used regularly. At about the same time, Maggie with PAHA was working to produce a housing availability and affordability study. We worked with them to get more information and make sure that that was as accurate as possible as it could be. We've shared that information with the community, and is also on available on the website, our website, as well as many others throughout the region. The initial goal was we developed a solutions toolkit. Now, this is sort of an item that all of the planners, when we started this with this work group, we brought all of these things to say there isn't one thing that's going to solve housing and growth issues. There's multiple things. So we created this toolkit, and one at a time, we started ticking off which ones do we want to develop? How do we put more information under this one? Who's the lead partner under that one? And that accomplishment of continually developing that toolkit and updating it on the website so that it's an available resource for all decision makers, developers, and other organizations that need to address this issue. This is kind of the core and the heart of what the work we're doing leads back to. We accomplished, along with other organizations, a rental survey. That told us the facts of what we needed to know that we were all talking about, that folks were paying more than half of their wages in rent, and almost everyone who was surveyed had been affected by rental changes within the previous year. We heard from Victoria earlier on the rental-owned communities. She's made huge strides since even when this PowerPoint was made. So I really appreciate that work. And it's one that's got legs of its own, and it's going to change the face of where folks live for a lot of people in the future. One of the first things that our citizens talked about was they wanted to preserve open space on the prairie. That's almost 2 years ago. There was a big movement to do that. And I'm very proud of the county and putting that information forward, where their commissioners actually appointed an open space commission that's moving forward with work on doing what the citizens wanted. So that is a testament to how and why this was a great grassroots movement. I love that grassroots, we're talking about open space. But anyway, that we were able to pull that together and get them what they'd asked for. You heard from Carrie on HomeShare. That's a 501c3 in less than a year that already has going to have a platform, I understand, to match folks and be just one more slice in the pie of how we can house people in Kootenai County. This is one of the places where community land trusts are a thing that has happened here, but it's not a top conversation, but it is something that PAHA is looking at in the future. My understanding is to be an entity that can manage a community land trust. Maggie, do you want to do just a quick minute on what a community land trust is and how that might work?
Sure. Well, and we have actually a community land trust in process, right, or in working right now in Kootenai County through Habitat, but essentially the land is owned and the deed restrictions are controlled through the land lease to the home. And so the focus here is home ownership. that can relatively be affordable for our low wage earners because the land cost is taken out. And through those deed restrictions, there is a limited amount of equity, but nonetheless equity that can be built, along with when they sell the home, it retains the selling price within the affordability range by that area median income wage earner. So it's really a brilliant vehicle really to get our low wage earners into affordable homes and enjoy the security of having a mortgage payment that doesn't change like the rents go up, and helps them build some worth that would otherwise not be available if they just stayed in rentals.
Great. And I did touch base on the deed restrictions template, and
Great.
that is new. And James Casper, I didn't mean to overlook you on the community land trust piece. Habitat has done great work
Yeah.
in the area and is the leading model of how land trusts work. And that is something that we're going to continue. We've done some presentations, and James has been great at coming to a lot of our programs to discuss that. So I appreciate that land trust work and the expansion of that for both. So anyway, Maggie, if you wanted to just, again, touch base real quickly, you mentioned the deed restrictions and how that works, but I think the key thing for anyone listening to hear here is this is a voluntary action. This isn't something that an organization or a government imposes on a property. But if you want to talk about how PAHA is working in that arena as well.
Thanks, Kiki. I'd love to. This has been a year of, I think, tremendous learning and tremendous opportunity for us in our community. We can tap into the private market in incredible ways to ensure the reservation and preservation of housing that our local workers can afford in developments with these developers. As they go before jurisdictions, they ask for changes in zoning, they ask for changes in density, whatever, in return for making sure that they carve out a certain number of units with each one of these developments for our local workers. The challenge is that those deed restrictions are complicated and they're difficult to manage for the private market, for our developers, and businesses don't want to do that, right? And in a land trust, it's a lot easier because the land lease controls those deed restrictions. But we are talking where the land and the home are purchased by a low wage earner because they're priced at a price point that they can get into. And so PAHA is in a position now with a full deed restriction program management, the legal documents and all the policies and procedures that go with that. So PAHA can partner now with the private market to say, please do this. And then you don't have to worry about managing these deed restrictions going forward. And we've set 99 years. So it's affordability in perpetuity, very similar. The deed restrictions are very similar to what they are with a community land trust. It'll be a maximum resale. It'll be, certain limitations that the developer feels strongly about, that the jurisdiction feels strongly about. And then the key is in that resale that it retains the affordability for the low wage earner over a period of time, a very long time. So I think this is really quite leading edge. I can tell you when I first got into it, I didn't realize that it was as complicated as it is, but it's been done, and it's been done nationally. This program is Fair Housing approved and Freddie and Fannie approved. And it really was quite a gift by a national organization that is starting to do this in other communities. So it's a fabulous opportunity for us, not only in Kootenai County, but I think really throughout the state. And I'm already talking with several jurisdictions and cities across the state about this particular program management. So it's exciting. And we've got a couple of developers right now that we're working on to do this jointly with them to manage the deed restrictions. It's going to take some time, but if we can really get this moving and rocking and rolling, I think we'll get the inventory that we need in the next several years.
Great. Thank you, Maggie. That's a huge amount of work, and I appreciate you sharing it throughout the state as well. So thanks. Another thing we did, and this happened just, I mentioned it earlier, just a month ago, we had been working on an annual joint workshop for planning and zoning commissioners, city and county planners and elected officials and urban renewal agency representatives. I am really happy to report that by the hard work of this working group, we were able to have every jurisdiction and the county represented at this meeting. We had over 60 people there. We put on an 1.5-hour long program, which covered a lot of this information that was new to them. And what it has established is the talking space for the electeds and commissioners and folks who need to know what we need in housing and growth issues to be able to have dialogue, understand this toolkit, and understand what their role is in moving forward conversations surrounding development agreements and deed restrictions, and working with organizations like Maggie's to be able to bring forward these things to our community to provide local worker housing. So that was a very well-attended event. We were thrilled with that turnout. I will tell you that we did an exit survey, and there were over actually, there were 100% of the responses said they wanted to have an additional workshop like this, and they'd like to have it more frequently than once per year. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to continue that work, and that's very important to educate, especially as these positions and seats turn over, to be able to have a resource for them to go for education on how we can continue to accomplish these great things.
Kiki, may I just want to comment on that?
Sure.
When I was down in August, I spoke at an Idaho Housing and Finance housing conference. And I will tell you, this work jurisdictionally is really unique. There are not very many communities that have come together to do this. So, and this workshop hadn't even taken place yet. So it is absolutely fabulous. And other towns are wanting to try and model this work that the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership has been able to do to bring everybody together collaboratively. So it's really great.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, proud of you all. Again, that's awesome work for everyone. I mentioned this earlier. We have ongoing conversations in the healthcare industry lane about housing, and we have one project that still we are moving forward on, but there's additional conversations regarding how we can work with our healthcare leaders to provide housing there. And I'm sure that that's one that's going to create some new and creative resources and avenues that we're going to be able to share with other industries. We have ongoing discussion with apartment owners regarding restricting inventory. This is much more difficult than ownership, but there are ways to do that. And there are interested parties in the apartment ownership and building realm that are really wanting to help create inventory for that 80 to 120% AMI person who's having a difficult time keeping a job here because they are not ready for home ownership, but they need a place to live. A new thing that came out of the workshop is a development incentives toolkit project. We have someone who's spearheading that, and they presented the top, I think it was 10 or 12 items that as a development community, they want to bring forward to our decision makers to say, here's some things that can help incentivize us to build within that price point that your local workers need. And that is a brand new conversation, just a month old. And I hope that that toolkit project gets more traction and we're able to develop each one of those items so that it works for the cities and the counties to be able to talk about them. Our goal is to continue to connect these projects, and that's what this group is about, and share solutions as we develop them and make sure that we're current and effective. This toolkit where we're at now is that we are continually updating that. This is basically a regional housing strategy, and there's a lot of communities that have these coalitions, and they come up with a strategy. How do we use these things? Where do we put this together? And our toolkit is just that. It's going to say what item is appropriate, what are our partners that we can bring to the table and connect them in order to accomplish one of these items. It does, as we expand, new information is continually updated under there. Coming up, you heard Lindsay Allen talk about a funding campaign to build sources for land and buy downs on properties. We have discussions regarding ordinance consistency reviews that may allow project streamlining. These are things that are very, very vague because it's going to take a lot of conversation what that looks like, but they are things that have been approached as potential new toolkit items. Short-term rental discussions, you've read about that a little bit for fairness and housing solutions, but there's a lot going on in that arena, and we're sure that each of the jurisdictions are going to take a hard look at that when probably in the near future, when new policies are put forward. We have co-op housing projects meetings that are scheduled in the first quarter of next year, and co-op housing is just that. It's about how do we put together people who need employees and resources to be able to have them purchase projects that they can possibly house their own staff in. A weekly update is what's on the website, and that's really key to keep everyone informed and how we can just say, this is what's happened in the work group. It only takes a few minutes to take a look at that, and that's on the website regularly. Talking all the time about how you can support. I'm preaching to the choir here, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. I appreciate you all being here and listening. So I'm going to stop share right now. And the one thing that we're going to move into is what is the future? Besides the fact that you have heard, sorry about that, that you have heard all of the subcommittee reports and where we're moving with these new options into the next year. I've had a heck of a good time doing this for the last couple of years, and I continually will continue to be involved and bringing forward new ideas and helping where I can. But it's time for us to discuss as a group how we're going to move this forward into a sustainable organization and what that looks like. So I can tell you what you got was a couple of options. I'm going to review those really quickly, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity through the chat box to ask questions. And we'll all of the panelists, and we'll do the best we can to answer them. The copy that I have is just words, but I think that you can see them and see what we're looking at here, the two options that we have. So I'll just take a look at that really quickly. The future structure is something that needs to move. These are the two most likely options. Option one was it being a new funded organization, in that we could create a new name that's maybe less cumbersome than Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership, like the partnership or some other thing like that. It can be a nonprofit, or it can remain a collaborative with just a volunteer base. It can be funded. I will tell you that I have put a note in here that there have been a number of entities who have come together to say that they would support funding of an operation like option one, because they believe the work is so important. And however this group decides it needs to move forward can be, I can involve those people if that is the avenue that they intend to go. The toolkits brought strategies and all of this forward already, and it's been successful today. So some of the pros on that is there's the least amount of marketing to kind of explain to the participants, to the advisory group, to the community what it is and what it does, other than making the name possibly easier. There are multiple examples of regional collaboratives like this to copy what they've done, to pick up some information from them. There's a number of them that have a board that is simply created of elected officials, planners, and funding partners as their board, and that's their governance completely. Then they have volunteer subcommittees that actually move out with the separate work. So it's almost how we're structured right now, which is what the organizational program could be. So regarding how much time it would take would really depend on how the board was decided to come together and who the administrator ended up being. So it will take time to organize that. I mentioned that strong leadership would be required. There's a lot of strong leaders in our community. I'm certain we can find them. There is a I don't know about this one because I didn't write it. There's a high cost of overhead for a new singular focused organization. So I'm not sure what that is. Possible fatigue of having multiple nonprofit organizations working on regional housing issues and competing for funding. I think that is a very real possibility. Everyone out there who's in one of these advisory group capacities knows their organization is always looking for funding. But we think that there's in the pro side that if there is one organization that's focused on just housing and growth, it could help the others have less of a burden to bear on that. The second one is merging with an existing nonprofit and taking it on. CDA 2030 is the one I had talked to. They already have a board in place. They have the ability and willingness to prioritize housing and growth issues. They don't have to do any excessive startup because they already are there. They are well known in the community. The members, their board are supporting this project because largely they're overlapping partners through CDA 2030 and the partnership. And they have focused priorities in the implementation plan for CDA 2030 that nearly half of them have housing and growth as part of the action items required. Some of the cons are that CDA 2030 was created with the greater Coeur d'Alene area and has a majority of funding coming from Coeur d'Alene. Expanding regionally may require some additional effort. The name change may not be enough to garner support and clarity that they've expanded. The name had a marked undercurrent with some groups who gave it a global agenda and negative connotation. So I think they were planning on changing anyway. Staff time would be spent on housing and other identified community projects. They are planning on having staff would be limited to 25% for the housing and growth issues partnership. So those are kind of the two options, and I hope you all had a chance to look at it. What I want to do now is kind of open it up through the chat box. If you have any questions, please ask them now. I'll stop share as you should all have a copy of this. And then we're going to do a live poll. But please know that what the intent is that after this live poll is done, this is sort of our regular participant group. We are going to send a survey out with the same question, summaries, and pros and cons so that you'll be able to share that with your boards, commissioners, appropriate administrators, and membership. And we want to be able to do that to get as broad-based of community feedback as we can so that myself and this working group can move forward with putting together what the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership looks like in the future. So did I have any questions from the panelists or any of the participants?
We have a question that came in from Jeanette Laster in the Q&A. Looks like the chat is disabled. So she said in the Q&A, she knows you've invested a lot of effort in bringing these groups together to explore these options and moving the work forward. You have shared the pros and cons here and having a great deal of community organizing experience. Can you maybe share where your vision and choice might be leaning toward? Do you find one more successful? And then it looks like Scott Krajak is typing something.
Okay. That's a good question, Jeanette. And I'm not looking at it's in the Q&A, not the chat box. Gotcha. Yep. Thank you. Okay, I'm looking at that. That is a good question. If you're asking me, my personal, neither of these were my choice. So mine was a different one. These were derived from the options that were available at hand. It was my original hope that there would be a nonprofit that would take the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership as its primary focus and be able to move that regionally without having to build a new nonprofit and have that happen. So that was my original hope, and that isn't the directions for the two options that we have, but this is about what the community wants to see happen. So that's why this survey is so important. And Scott's typing.
Then Barb Neal has a question. How would the board of a new nonprofit be elected or selected, I guess?
Yeah, I guess most of the collaboratives that I've studied, any way that this group decides. It doesn't need to be an elected position, but what has normally happened when you have joint jurisdiction cooperation like this is the same way the working group was formed. The topic is around housing and growth, which requires planning department participation. So the planners became the work group members. There was an elected official from each city invited to attend. So they also became part of that initial board. Then the next step is what other members, we have KMPO, we have Habitat for Humanity, we have PAHA, because their lane and what they deal with is housing and growth. So that is how the board originally came together. It would be my guess that a new nonprofit would continue with the same slots that govern it, being those people. There could be conversation from those people to have separate additional committees of funders or that type of thing, but that's where it has been normally done, is from those leadership roles.
You see the two, Christina?
I do. Christine
Yeah.
said, my question is, what will happen to the people that have been very involved up until now if it goes to CDA 2030? That's a good question.
You want me to take that one, Kiki? Just
Go ahead.
okay. So I serve on CDA 2030's board and have been involved in in-depth conversations about how this could happen. And the board is very supportive of taking it on. And the goal is to keep all the same people involved. The CDA 2030 already has created these partnership meetings that are happening quarterly for all the other focus areas. And so the goal is to kind of use that same structure and involve the working group and advisory group and figure out what's the best mechanism, structure, and frequency for meetings moving forward. So that part wouldn't be lost. And then your second question, Christina, on how many hours have gone into this and if 25% of focus is enough or not to cover it. CDA 2030 has said if they can get additional funding, they would ramp that up. So initially it's 25% for the executive director, and then the volunteers would also help out. If there's additional funding, then that could be met with additional staffing potentially, or more time dedicated to housing. I'll turn it back to you, Kiki. It looks like we have a few more came in.
Jeff Tyler has said, many who I talked to have said their property taxes have increased around 19%. Rents and mortgages will in turn have to increase. What now? Well, Jeff, that's the reason why we're all here. I think that most of the folks in this working group, as well as this advisory group, know that if we don't continue to move forward solutions to house our local workers, we're all going to suffer. And we don't have the ability to close the gate. And the valuations in property are continuing to rise. So that's a great question, but that's one of the reasons why this organization is here, is we're continually addressing what happens with growth and how our community wants to see that managed. And Scott Krajek said, I love what CDA 2030 has done and accomplished. I think the greatest strength of combining is the structure already being in place, but that structure could also be seen as a weakness because there is a group that opposes CDA 2030. The biggest concern I have is the diluting of the agenda. CDA 2030 has a very diverse agenda. Does anyone on the panel have thoughts about that? Go ahead.
I can take that, and then I don't know if James or Bob would want to weigh in as well, since they're new board members joining CDA 2030's board. So there are 6 focus areas that CDA 2030 has, and as Kiki mentioned in that write-up, there's more than half of the action items are tied directly to growth and housing. So there are quite a few action items and definitely goals and objectives that are broader than just growth and housing, but majority of it is growth and housing, and it ties together, I think, very complementary in nature. I mean, there is definitely some groups that oppose CDA 2030, but that might be true of a new group that's formed as well. So I think continuing to give a message about what the mission is of CDA 2030 as an organization, no matter if this merger happens, is really important. Just is not tied to United Nations. So to keep reiterating, there never has been, and there won't be that connection. So Bob or James, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think One of the comments that I kind of identified with in the process of CDA 2030 kind of reimagining itself, it was somewhat tied to some goals and the kind of circumstances that existed when it started. Obviously today the circumstances are different, and that's part of the strategic review that they're going through. They've got a new process for a new strategic plan. That's kind of the point, is to, you know, reimagine and be more interactive and at a larger scale on the entire county, as opposed to maybe just a more focused on the, you know, greater Coeur d'Alene area. I think the idea is to respond to all of these factors. So, I mean, there's still work to be done around that. There's a lot of work that's, you know, already got into this, and the idea is to expand on it. But that is kind of part of the point, is to respond to those conditions and try and give the community what it wants, and the municipalities and, you know, everybody else involved with trying to help the community what they need, and support them in the best way.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of echo that. I appreciate both of your guys' comments on the board. You know, and the new strategic plan that they've developed, I think is pretty broad reaching, and there's a lot of stuff that's combined in there that does look at the entire county, and it does touch upon the housing issues heavily. And I think that tying this into what they are doing, it really does fit with the majority of their goals within that plan. I think that as they start to pivot and start to be able to address the area more regionally, it'll be a good process. I was impressed with the conversations that took place the last couple of meetings I went to, and I, you know, look forward to working with them as we move forward on this. Whether this group gets tied into CDA 2030, and however CDA 2030 we ultimately change that name, you know, I think that I think that there's potential for success there. So.
Okay, good. I'll just share that as I said, I have received a lot of feedback and information, and I've tried to keep my opinion neutral as far as how this should go. As you guys all know, it's no secret I'm passionate about the housing and growth issues and the success of this partnership. It's what the community wants to be in the forefront. And I have had a lot of folks talk to me about that dilution issue. Why would you, use the energy and effort and slow it down by diluting it with another organization? Because that organization can be successful on its own, with its own continued mission, and continue to do this that way. So I know that in my mind, there's two good options out there. There may be 3 or 4 more. I don't know. My personal view is that this is a talented group of people, and they keep showing up because this is a really critical issue, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. I would like to see a huge percentage, in fact, the supermajority percentage of whatever organization leads this, to be focused on housing and growth issues. So that's where I'm at with it. Are there any more questions from any of our participants?
We do have another one came in from Christina, the chamber, and then also Brooke had a question that she had sent me. So do you want to take Christina's first, since it's on the Q&A, and then I can read Brooke's?
Christina's was, Kiki, do you know if the businesses willing to support a new group would be willing to give funding to CDA 2030 so that could fund additional hours and staff? No, they're not. From what I understand, but that doesn't mean that CDA 2030 couldn't sit down with the folks I've talked to and try to convince them. A couple of them have been, interested in this being separate, standalone, viewed. I think Maggie brought it up that a lot of people are looking at these coalitions that they're focused on one topic, and that's this affordable housing AMI issue, and not trying to take on other things. And so the folks that I have talked to have been pretty specific in that would have to be the project measurable goals area that they would want to fund.
Okay, and then Brooke, I'll read your question, then if you want to clarify anything as well. So her question is, do you see the future of RHGIP as a convener or a doer? Is RHGIP a way to emphasize work that organizations or existing organizations are doing and providing more information sharing regional coordination? Or is RHGIP a way to introduce work that isn't being done in the community?
That's a really great question. I think that RHGIP, since its inception, has been introducing work that hasn't been done in the community. That's what the toolkit is about. So I think it is both of those things. And that is its focus, is to say we're the resource and the connector to put together projects with, if they need deed restriction help, if they need, they have a potential land trust ability, if they are a land owner who wants to work with Habitat, we have the ability to help connect those people. But the toolkit is the resources that are being developed, and that is and has introduced new concepts and new tools into the community that everyone can use. So that's a great question. I hope I answered it, but I think the answer is both.
I would agree with that.
Anything else that I missed? Thank you all for those questions. I really appreciate it. Hillary, you have the poll.
I do.
And we're going to put that up. Keep in mind, this isn't a final vote. What this is a poll to say we are kind of surveying the participants today. We know we have a lot more people involved, and so we're going to send this survey out to all of the advisory group members, and all of their decision makers can decide who in their organization should take this survey, and then we'll have that sent back. When that email comes out to you, there will be a deadline on it, and it will be quick, because as we know, if things sit in your inbox, you will just skip it and to do it later. But if it has an immediate deadline, you will pay attention and get it done now. So it will have an immediate deadline, and we'll get that out here this week. So if everyone is ready, all of the host and panelists can't vote, but the rest of you participants, if you can lock in your vote on one of these items now, based on these two options we've presented and had a Q&A about.
Okay, answers are coming in. We have about 9 people we're still waiting on. Okay, waiting on one more. If anyone in the group of attendees hasn't voted, please submit your vote.
If you are cheating and not actually in this webinar,
That's right.
you are now caught.
Exactly.
We'll give you a few more seconds, and then we want to provide
Okay.
these results.
Sounds good. Okay, we're still missing one. Do you want me to conclude it?
I think we will go ahead and conclude without them.
Okay, I will share the results. It's pretty close and we're missing one.
Okay, so that helps us, and as you all can see, we're going to capture this, so it's going to come out with the next poll. And I'll just move to our next steps are going to be that we're going to schedule our working group meeting in January. We're going to, before that time, send out a survey to all of our advisory group members so that they can send this exact summary with its pros and cons and the survey link to their members and administrators. And when I'm saying this, partners, if you feel that you have a membership that all of your members need to weigh in, that's fine. If you have, if you're a jurisdiction and you just want to send it to your planning and zoning and your council members or your staff, or if you are a larger organization, your chambers of commerce, and you want to send it to certain policymaking committees, or you want to send it to your membership at a large, that's up to you. We do have the ability to do single URL replies, so we won't have one person who's going to be able to load the ballot box, so to speak, and vote 30 times at this, for one item. So we should have a pretty fair assessment depending on who replies. I'm a firm believer and things are run by those who show up. So however this works out, I think that the folks who have showed up know that they're going to be asked to work on this moving forward. They're going to be asked to fund eventually. And I'm going to be here to help mentor, as I have with many of these other subcommittees that have spun off into their own groups, and do everything I can to help. So with that, if anyone else has a question, I'd be happy to answer it. Other than that, that's what we will see coming out from an email from Hillary within the week with the survey. And I appreciate all of your time and all of this great work. It's amazing what we've all done together when a community comes together and we work hard like this. We've really accomplished great things in a short period of time. So I'm going to wish you all a very happy holiday season. And if there's nothing else, we will be signing off at 4:01 p.m. Got to keep it to an hour all the time. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.